Hi, this is going to be the first part in a series of videos looking at how to build sample slicers in the grid, with manual slicing, beat division slicing, and various features that allow you to tweak and glitch the samples. Here's an example of a slicer I've been working on over the last couple weeks. I've got some old breakbeats loaded into it. I'm going to play a 1-minute clip of these breaks being sliced and glitched in here, and then I'm going to give an overview of this sampler and how it works, and then I'm going to get into the first parts of building a patch like this. So yeah, here's a clip of this slicer slicing up some old breaks and glitching them out. So yeah, as you can hear, it's slicing the samples and glitching them out. So I'm going to close this patch now and open up the same thing but without any automation happening. And right off the bat, I know some people might say, what's the point of even making this series on how to build this? Why don't I just upload this thing? And I do plan on uploading some version of a sample slicer soon. I know I've been saying that for a while, but I've been working on trying to put together a pack of my grid patches, and every time I start organizing them to get a pack together, I end up kind of reworking things, changing patches, fixing problems. So I just haven't really gotten it together yet. And that's kind of what happened with this patch. I kind of went down a rabbit hole of trying to rework the way I've been doing my slicers. But either way, I figured some people would find it interesting to just learn the techniques to build projects like this. Even if you're not trying to build the exact same slicer as me, you might want to learn different techniques for getting sample slicers and different techniques for kind of glitching out samples in the grid so you can apply it to your own patches. And and as I go through this video series, I'm going to be exploring different techniques to do this kind of stuff. I'm not just going to be showing how to make this exact patch, because as I've been working on these kind of patches, I've been kind of stumbling into roadblocks and problems and then figuring out different ways to work them out. And so I'm going to be exploring different techniques to do this kind of stuff and weighing out what are the pros and cons to using those techniques. So you might have seen too that at the beginning of 2023, I had uploaded onto the Bitwiggers forum an early version of this kind of slicer. I had a sample slicer on there that I ended up taking down because it had some problems. The CPU usage was too high, and then on top of that, the hold time didn't work correctly because I didn't know how to work it at that time with the loop length, and just the whole structure of it was off, so I ended up removing it. But since then, I've been doing multiple versions of these kind of slicers, and so this is the newest one that I've been working on. So yeah, let's look at the whole structure of this thing and get into the features. And I know some people might want to skip over all the features and just get to building it, but I would say if you are planning on following this along and building a slicer, I would recommend actually watching this part and seeing what the features are, because otherwise it might be confusing and you might get a little lost in the future videos, because you won't really know why I'm doing, what I'm kind of working towards. So yeah, I would say if you are going to follow this series, I would recommend seeing what these features are so you kind of know what the end goal is and what I'm trying to achieve in the upcoming videos. And then one more thing too, some people might be wondering why I'm even building a sample slicer and going through all this work, because you already do have some slicing within Bitwig. You can right click on an audio file, slice it to a multi-sample. You can also do some slicing kind of in the multi-sample editor. But for me personally, I don't think the multi-sample editor is as intuitive as having a dedicated slice mode. And then on top of that too, the way that I'm slicing within loop length allows for some kind of cool glitchy tricks that I don't really know how to do in other samplers. And then on top of that too, the fact that the Bitwig sampler has multiple modes, it has repitch, textures, and cycles, allows for a lot of sound design capability with a slicer. There's not many granular samplers that you can slice within. The only other one that I know of is Mimic in Reason, and it's cool to be able to slice within a granular sampler because it allows you to do like full granular beats that stay in time, because it's sliced. Even if you're totally stretching and tweaking out the beats, they still stay in time. as opposed to, let's say you were going to throw a drum loop into a typical granular sampler and start, tweaking the grain size and the position, the speed, pitch, whatever. It would totally throw the timing off, and the beat would not make sense rhythmically. The only thing you would be able to do with it would be to like cut the one shots and piece them back together. So so that was kind of part of why I decided to get into this project, was that I wanted to have slicing in combination with all the cool features of Bitwig Sampler. And then from there, I just kind of went on a rabbit hole of like exploring different things I could do with it. So anyway, let's get into it now. Look at the structure of this thing and the different features. So as you can see, it's multiple polygrid patches and some no-grid patches and a sampler. And let me open up now the sampler window and just let it be floating over here so we can see what we're doing. And now the slicing happens on this first polygrid window over here, in this interface. And if you've seen my earlier slicers, like the one that I had uploaded on the Bitwiggers forum, or the ones I was showing on YouTube, I used to slice them with the Pt.01 8 modulators, with these, using these sliders. But I decided to go a different way with this one because there were some things I didn't like about using the Pt.01 8 modulators for slicing. For one, they don't get a fine enough resolution to really hone in on the sample position. And then also they had some other problems I didn't like. So I decided to just do the slicing on this interface over here. And you also might be wondering why I have multiple polygrid patches, why it's not just in one. And part of that is to keep the CPU load down, because all the real math and all the inner workings of it are happening in this second polygrid patch over here. But I have it set that you never have to open it. And that's because when you're dealing with really large polygrid patches, when you open up the window, the CPU load gets much higher than when the window's closed. Even if you're still playing audio into it, even if you're still using it, when the window's actually open, the CPU load is a lot higher. So for my large grid patches, I prefer for the actual grid window to never have to open, and for you to basically be able to just use macro controls down here to do everything you want. But I do have on this one, this other polygrid patch this one is nested inside of, that has all the slicing controls, but this is a much simpler patch. And also on top of that, you can close this later and bring the CPU load down. So one thing you'll notice too with really large patches, if you're working on large patches for a while in the grid, your CPU load will just keep going up. And even when you close the patch, it might stay high unless you quit Bitwig, reload the patch, and the CPU load will be lower. So, for me, ideally with something like this, I would just set the slice positions in here, save it, and then never open this window again, and just keep it and just use, all the macros down here for tweaking the samples. But once it's sliced, I don't really need to open this window again. So anyway, yeah, that's why this stuff is set up like this. So now let's get into slicing a sample. So if we look over here within this row, we have a bunch of different things for determining the slice points. And let me maybe turn down the volume so this thing isn't too loud over me talking. So the first row we have is the main knob for slice position. So you can see I can move it back with fine tune. So this is the main one. Down here is fine tune. So this is just a bit of a finer resolution. Up here, this allows you to unlink slices from each other. And then this up here allows you to shorten the length of a slice. So by default, the slices are all linked up. So where one slice ends, the next one starts. So you can see now I'm on slice 5, but if I was to go to slice 6 and bring it back, now slice 5 is going to be shorter. You see? And then so then each slice is kind of confined to a boundary. Each slice can be moved as far back as the slice before it, which is going to basically shorten the time of the slice before it to 0, and as far forward as the slice after it. And then it just kind of goes off like this and becomes a loop length of 0. I could have it actually stop right here before the next slice, but the thing is that would require another line of logic modules, and I'm just trying to keep the CPU low manageable, so it didn't really seem that necessary because you still see the boundary of the slice. So let's get to unlink. So let's say I want to unlink a slice. I can take this slice here, hit unlink, and then I can move it to wherever I want it to, and it's now not going to be not affected by the slices around it anymore. It's just going to be free to do what it wants. And then like I can shorten this, and now this can be its own slice. And notice the first time I clicked on it, it didn't play in the right place, but now every time I click on it afterward, it will. That's just only the first time you set the slice for unlinked slices. Also notice these aren't all playing all the way through because I don't have it in one-shot mode right now. I have this sampler has two modes, one-shot mode or envelope mode. With envelope mode, it just plays as long as I hold the key. Yeah. So anyway, so now when that's done, what happens is that you see the slices before it and after it are linked. You see? That's because now slice 4 has been taken out of the equation. So slice 3 is linked to slice 5. And then let's say I want to remove this second slice where slice 4 was. I can just reduce the length of slice 3. And now there is no slice 4 anymore. So let me bring this now back into the mix. Where did I have it? It was somewhere around here. Just to keep the beat in time. And then you might be wondering why I added this whole unlink feature, because this was kind of a hassle to add. This was one of the more difficult things. And for me, though, I really wanted unlink to be available in here because I generally like to, when I'm slicing a beat, have everything linked. But let's say at some point you want to remove a slice or add a slice. You don't want to have to readjust all the slices. So it's nice to be able to move things around after the fact. It's also cool to be able to have overlapping slices. Like let's say, for example, like this beat, I have each one shot sliced out. But let's say, for example, I also want to have longer slices that overlap with the other slices. So I can actually do that in here. Like let's say I want this to play a whole loop. So now I can do this. Oops, wrong one. So now I have this whole loop, and I still have the individual one shots of that section. Okay, so yeah, that's why I added unlink. So that's pretty much it. So in terms of this row up here, this will just shorten a slice from its loop length, unless it's an unlink, in which case this just totally determines the length of the slice. So now let's look at what else is in here. So on this interface, the only other part to deal with is the sample length. So this part is really important. For this to work, you have to input in the length of the sample, which it says it down here, but I would recommend for something like this actually looking at the sample length within the browser, not within here, because this only shows two numbers past the decimal point, and it's more accurate if you can see 3, which is what it shows in the browser. So you can see I have that number over here, and this corresponds with the hold time over here on the sampler. And that's really important for making sure that it never plays past this point, that it plays exactly the length of the slice. Because if that's not correct, then what will happen is you'll get clicks and pops, and then as you change slice sizes, it won't work correctly. And then on top of that, as you change things like speed and pitch, all of those change the length of the sample. So those all need to correspond with the hold time too. So as you can see now, I can change the speed and it won't create any problems. See? And I can also, time stretches. Oops, did that hit the sample in front of it? Oh, it's got a little bit of that. Okay. So, yeah, I just need to move this over a little bit. Okay. So yeah, so that's important for time stretching to work right. And then for, like I was saying, speed, you want all that stuff to work correctly. Okay? So yeah, so that's why hold time is really important. So and I'm going to get into all this in the further videos. Like I said, I'm just giving an overview of it right now. I'm going to make a whole video exploring different ways to get the hold time to work correctly, because there's a few different techniques that I've gone about. You might have seen I did a video showing one way that I was doing it several months ago, but I've improved upon that way, and I have kind of a simpler way to get the hold time working now. But so that's it for this window. Then the only other things on this grid screen are, there's a couple of features over here. Oh, where do I have the? Did I close this window? Okay. So there's a couple of features over here that allow slicing to be made a little bit more simple. So like one thing, when you're slicing, I don't like to have to hit a key every time I'm triggering a new slice and find which key it's on and stuff. So I have this kind of automated way. Let me turn the volume down even lower so I can have it just sit there and repeat and turn the step knob to dial in each slice. And there's two different ways of it repeating. It can repeat by a beat division. So it just sends a new MIDI note every quarter note or every eighth note or something, or it can just repeat the loop length. So the first one I can show you is loop length over here. So you see what this is doing now is it's just repeating it so I can dial in each step. So let me just show you really quickly an example of that. So if I was going to start with slicing, I usually have all the slices at like 100%, so I can just dial them back to get it where I want it. So let's say I have it like this. I can So now I can just move this step knob to go to the next slice. And then I can get this right up, that's right up to the point of the next slice. And then I can go to the next step. And you'll notice that slice, even though it was at 100, couldn't go that far because each slice is limited by the slice in front of it again, because it has to stay within the boundaries. Okay. All right, so that's for me an easier way to do slicing. So I can also do that with MIDI trigs. I'm not going to get into all that now because it's just this part's kind of the boring part. So the other options we have here, I can take it out of manual mode and put it on beat division. So that'll just slice it between 1/28 to 1. So like I can be 1/28 of the sample, 1/64, 1/32, 1/16, 1/8, 1/4, 1/2, and then the entire sample. So that's, if I take it out of manual, then the divisions are controlled by this divisions knob. I'm not even going to bother with that because this sample is not quantized, so nothing would work right. These are just the raw old breakbeats. I kind of made a collage of them in this sample, and they're not quantized, so they kind of require the manual mode to work. The other thing over here is this key. So by default, pressing a key triggers a new sample. I can turn that off, and then pressing a key will just pitch the sample up and down. And then you can use now the step knob to go through the different samples. Okay, so let me put it back though here. And then that's basically it for this section. Oh yeah, the last thing is this thing that says this is short for deactivate slice. So what this does is that this just kind of makes the slices hold a little bit of a tighter time when you're using this as opposed to when you're dialing in the slices. And the reason for this, so let me show you how this works. So let me, I'm going to put this on. So within this slicer, this works very differently to the previous slicers that I've done, because I used to have each slice was kind of hardwired to its control, and then they were all running into a merge module that would feed to the loop start and the loop length. In this one, I don't have it that way. What I have is all this information is going from these slices is going into here, and it's being read by a really fast LFO. It's 24K. So this LFO is basically quickly scanning through all the slice positions, so it can, every time I change note, immediately basically feed all the slice information into the slices. And then I'm going to get into that a little later in this video and in the later videos. But then what happens is all the slices have sample and holds. So they as soon as the slice is triggered, it holds whatever the value is for that slice. So the whole reason I have it set up like that is to bring down the CPU load, because instead of 64 slices being active, I only have one slice that's active. I have one slice that's active, but then I have 16 slices that are being fed information. So whenever I trigger a slice, the 8 slices before it and after it are all fed information as to which slices are active around that main slice. And the reason for that is because all these slices are connected to each other. For example, every time I unlink a slice, then that slice is connected to the slice before it. So the reason why I wanted to have 16 slices available is that allows me to have basically a maximum of 7 in a row unlinked slices before it creates any problems. And except for at the end. Then at the end, I can have as many unlinked slices as I want. But within the kind of sequence of synced slices, you can unlink up to 7 of them, and they'll all still be related. Once you go past that, then you just have to adjust the time for a slice before that or after that. But I know this all sounds maybe a little bit complicated, but I'm going to get into that in later videos. This is just sort of a technique, like I was saying, for bringing down the CPU so that it's essentially just flashing information really quickly into the slices in the other polygrid batch. So now, anyway, one thing too about that, I was saying it gives you tighter time. When you're actually playing notes with a keyboard, I never noticed any issues with it. But then once I started playing actual MIDI sequences, every now and then what would happen is that the timing would slightly be off on a slice, and it wouldn't play right. So what I decided to do is just that the one slice that's playing has so once you hit deactivate, it just creates a buffer that stores information for all 64 slices. So whatever slice is playing is hardwired. It's not still scanning to see what are the slice values. So yeah, I'm going to get into that again. So anyway, now let's get into what are the features on here. These are all the places where you can manipulate the sound and affect it. So the first row is speed. Okay, and pitch, so one thing to note is that when you're in repitch mode, speed and pitch are the same thing. But when you're in textures or cycle mode, they're not. And when you're in textures and cycle mode, pitch doesn't affect the whole time. But when you're in repitch mode, it does. Because when you're in repitch mode, it's essentially like a record. It's speeding it up or slowing it down. Okay? And then I have a pitch envelope. And what this does is if it goes forward, it bends it from high to wherever it's at. And then if it goes backward, it bends it from low to wherever it's at. And then I have a pitch timing for the envelope here. Okay. So yeah, that's the section for pitch. The whole next section over here all deals with time stretching. So I have this knob over here that allows me to do time stretching. Let me maybe zoom in a little bit. Okay, so the way that time stretching knob works is if it's at 0, there's no time stretching happening, and it's effectively off. As soon as you turn it up, it time stretches a little bit more as you go higher. Okay, and then over here, these two buttons, these decide if it's granular, so if it's textures mode or cycles mode. I'm going to get into both in a second, but this sync, what this does is that this will quantize the stretching amount to divisions of the sample length. So it'll either be, double the sample length, 4 times the sample length, 8 times, or 16 times. That's if this is on. If I turn off sync, though, it just freely moves, okay? Then the next thing I have for the time stretching is this thing grain link. If this is on, so this can be adjusted either backward or forward. If this is on, then what happens is that the grain size is linked to how much it's time stretched. So you can see so what that does, it basically means that it means that the more you time stretch, the more it'll shift what the grain size is. Okay, and then on top of that, we have an envelope over here for the grain size. Okay, and then so this envelope, like the other ones, it'll go forward or backward. So these are all bipolar control. So they're kind of like a bend backward or bend forward. And then this envelope. So then I also have this time envelope. So this will give an envelope to the amount of time stretching whenever you trigger it. So all these basically just affect the way the time stretching sounds. And then, so now we've only been in the granular mode. We also have over here, we can just turn it off, and then we're in cycles, and I have kind of different sets of parameters for cycles, but it's the same knobs. So, but instead of these being grain, these are related to the formant. And this, all this stuff kind of plays with the pitch as well. Okay, so yeah, that's basically it for the time stretching section. Oh yeah, there's one other thing. You just have the timing for the different envelopes. So over here, you just have the pitch envelope time, the stretch envelope time, and the grain envelope time. So that's these two rows. These are the time stretching section. Let me turn it off. So then the next row over here, these are different types of retriggers. So these are for doing kind of like stutter retriggers. And these are very influenced by the early Electron boxes. So like the machine drum, the mono machine, the octatrack, those all had a kind of unique style of retriggering that is kind of what I'm sort of influenced by with the way I set this up. So the first one is MIDI triggers. The second one is loop length retriggers. So I'm going to show you the difference in how both of these work. So the first one is MIDI triggers. Maybe this is still, it's not that loud. Okay. Here, I'll do another sample that's not quite as loud. So with MIDI retriggers, you can see this controls the retrig rate, and then if I turn release on, what'll happen is it'll work like those Electron boxes, that meaning that at the end of the retrigs, it'll play the sample. You can see. Oops. And then right now so far we haven't even been in one-shot mode. We've been in envelope mode, meaning that, so in this mode, as long as I hold the note, when I let go is when it plays the sample. If it's in one-shot mode, then it works like those Electron boxes where you have a retrig amount. And it doesn't matter now how long I hold the sample for. So this would be kind of more the way you would do it if you were like playing on drum pads or something where you just want to hit the sample once. And I was really trying to kind of get that squeaky sound that you get on those Electron boxes when you have really, really low time. You see where you just kind of get a little squeak at the beginning of the sample like that. Okay, so yeah, that's the MIDI trigs, and that's one-shot mode with the MIDI trigs. So and then again, if I turn off release, it's just going to play the retrig part. So then loop length retrigs works differently. So MIDI retrigs, as you can see, there's these lines. These are indicating new notes being retriggered. With the loop length retrigger, instead what this does is that this, let me turn this off. This just shortens the loop length. So if I'm over here, it's going to, and I have this on, let me turn off. Oops, I got to take these off. So now it's just going to loop the full length over and over again. But then I can turn this down like this. Okay. And then with this one, just like the other one, I have the release. So, and it works the same way as the other one in terms of one-shot mode and envelope mode. Either one is the same. And this just has a different sound to it than the MIDI retriggers. And then on top of that, I have a bend for these retriggers. So yeah, you can see there's a different sound to the different retriggers, and in different kind of, there's different uses for them. But I wanted to have both kinds. And just like the other one, if I turn off, so let me turn off bend. If I turn off release, it's just going to play while I hold the note, or if I'm in one-shot mode, it'll just play whatever. It'll play the note based on how this retrig amount. And then one last thing with these retrigs is that I have one more option. I have this option over here to turn off the retrigs if the retrig time is at 100% or is at 0%. So the reason for that is that I'd like to be able to just like play through the samples and not have to bother hitting the button to turn on the retrigs, but to be able to just kind of scroll through them whenever I want. So you can see with this, I can just kind of scroll through it and get stutters this way. And so you can see now if it's at 0% though, it doesn't do anything. And then if it's at 100%, it doesn't do anything. So here it does. So you can see again, I can just sweep through them. Okay, so yeah, that's it for the retrigs. And then I already showed you what one-shot mode does. Sustain just keeps the sustain on. What else do we have? We have a reverse. Okay, and then if you start using these things in combination, like you use the reverse with the retrigs, you can sometimes get kind of cool effects out of these. So that's the retrigs, and then let's get into the effects. So the effects, I don't have any effects on this. The idea is you can add later more effects, but I wanted to just have kind of simple stuff on the main interface. And if you listen to that sample I had of this, or not that sample, that sequence I had at the beginning of the video of those breaks being glitched out, there was not many effects being used. Most of that's all just like the granular stuff and the retrigs and pitch and stuff like that. But the effects, so I have a basic filter over here that has 3 modes: low pass, high pass, band pass. That's just using the filter device, but I've kind of set it up to have a few macro controls for quick use. So right now in low pass mode, if I'm at 100%, it's off. But then as I bring it down, as soon as I move it down, the filter's on, and I can sweep into low pass. And then I have over here resonance and filter decay. Okay, and then so then I have over here high pass mode. High pass mode works the opposite. In high pass mode, if it's over here, the filter's off, and then you can scroll through a high pass. And then the last one, I think it was band pass or notch. I got to check what I had, but anyway, in this mode, it will just sweep through it. So if it's at 0 or 100%, the filter's off. Okay? So let me just turn these filters off. And now the next section over here, these are all parameter locks. So like I was saying before, my old version of this type of sampler, I had the Parisi gate modulators doing the slicing. In this one, I don't have that. You saw the way I'm doing the slicing. But in this one, these are set to basically just give me snapshots of parameters so that I can quickly tweak these beats. So like that sequence I played in the beginning of the video, most of what was going on was just me moving this P-lock knob, because this is now set to a bunch of different snapshots of parameters within here. So I have 64 different snapshots, and I can sequence between them in different types of ways. Oh, whoops, it's off. Some of these kind of take a while to kick in, so they're meant to be more like on a sequence than on a specific hit. But you can see basically these give me a bunch of different snapshots. And then within this too, I have multiple ways I can run it. I can run it where just a knob scrolls through them, or I can hardwire them to keys. So if you have this on, if they're hardwired to keys, then each slice is basically going to have a corresponding parameter lock to it. So each slice will have this modulator that can be modulated to anything you want for that slice. So you can see kind of what that does to it. So yeah, I didn't actually set this up to be for those slices, so that's why it just sounds very random right now. Anyway, the last things we have on the parameter locks is this ability to smooth out the parameter locks. This will just interpolate in between them, so they're not as like sharp, the changes. And then this over here just quantizes the P-lock knob to 164 so that you're always exactly on a slice. And then this over here basically puts a hold whenever a note is hit. So the reason for that is that sometimes if this isn't on, if you just start scrolling through parameter locks, like while you're playing notes, it can sound very kind of clicky and weird. Because what's happening is it's scrolling through parameter locks while a single note is playing, so it ends up being really choppy and doesn't really work right. So I prefer this to be on so that whenever you hold a note, it just holds whatever parameter lock is playing until the next note comes, and then it'll move to whatever lock is active for that note. So that's what that does. So anyway, let me turn these off. And so again, I'm going to get into all of this in the upcoming videos, but right now I just wanted to show you what are the basic features, and that's basically it for the features. So that's what I've got going on in here. And now let me give you a little bit of a rundown of how the sampler is working and sort of show you the structure so you can kind of know what to expect in the upcoming videos. So within this first polygrid window, again, you saw earlier, this is where the slicing happens over here. And then over here we have a few other things. So this is just where the key tracking gets set up. I showed a video how to do that recently. It's pretty simple to set up key tracking. This is just where the sample speed is fed. So you can see these are just fed into this number. So the whole thing is just that the knob that's controlling this to give you this sample speed is also being sent to the other sampler where it controls the whole time. And then over here, what else do we have? So like I said, in this version of this sampler, I have this really fast LFO that's just quickly reading through all the slice information so it can send it to the other sampler where some sample and holds pick it up. Let me load up the other patch now and show you show you around that patch a little bit so you can see sort of some of the things I'm going to be building in these upcoming videos. So, and I don't know if I'm going to actually start building anything on this video. It's already been 40 minutes, so I don't want this to go on too long. So, yeah, anyway, I'm going to open now this patch, which is where all the stuff, all the inner workings are happening. And this patch, I still need to clean it up a lot. So you're going to see the CPU load is going to spike when I open it. But as soon as I close it, CPU load will come back down. It's still, for me, perfectly usable. But when you actually open it and start, moving around within the main patch, the CPU load goes high. So, like I was saying, excuse me, like I was saying, the information gets flashed into these. So these, excuse me, these over here are the slices. And so like I was saying earlier, I have 16 available, but only one, this one, slice number 9, is always the active one that's playing. So this just feeds directly to the start time and to the loop length. And so the reason why I had it set up like that is this whole kind of sequence here is required in order to determine the loop length and start time for each slice and its relationship to the slices around it. So in the other version I was doing of this, where I actually had 64 of these, the CPU load was just higher when I was opening these things because there's 64 of these slices. So I've been playing around with various ways to try to work around that. And so like I was saying, in this version of it, I'm collecting all that information from the LFOs in the other patch. That sends into here, and then I have that same LFO feeding into this array over here, and then these sample and hold modules that basically just hold the values for each slice. And the LFO gets shifted every time a note is hit. So what that does is that basically changes what notes are active in these 16 every time you hit a note, and that's always based around slice number 9. So slice number 9 is always the active note, and then the ones around it get adjusted for it. And then that method was working perfectly for me until I ended up later on, when I started actually using it with MIDI clips. Like I was saying, I started having a couple of little kind of glitches here and there. So I realized that this method wasn't going to work exactly how I wanted it to. So I ended up having to add this whole thing over here, which is basically, this just reads all the slice details and then just stores them pretty much in a buffer. So like I was saying, when you hit this deact, it turns off the gates going into these sample and holds. So the sample and holds just stay. So what happens is that these are just being fed into the main slice that's playing. So the main slice does not have to deal with reading information from the other one. It's just hardwired to slices, so that way every time you hit a note, you know that it's not going to slip to another note. It's not the start time isn't going to be off. Everything is going to be perfect. And then in terms of the notes around it, it's so fast, that LFO, that they all get there in time, that the relations of everything work. And then this over here is set up for the unlinks. So the unlinks are done with these latch modules over here. So in the same way that it kind of scans through and flashes the information from the other grid patch, it flashes the information for those unlinked sequencers. Those come into here, and those just get stored in these latch modules. And again, this is a more complicated way to do this. It's going to create more problems and more kind of hurdles you have to overcome when building something like this. So, I would say if you're not going to have a ton of features, this is probably not the most necessary way, because you can do this in a simpler way and, an easier way with less problems. But this was just kind of what I've been experimenting with lately. Anyway, this is the main phase. This is what comes from the key track or the knob, and that gets sent to everything. And then let's see, what else do we have going on in here? Then we have, here's where first let me show you where is it? This is all the stuff related to hold time. So the main thing for hold time now is just this little orange section over here, which is very slimmed down from how I used to have it. But the section that kind of adjusts everything to the hold time is kind of big. It's this whole setup right here. It's not that complicated to set up, even though it looks like it. But what this does is pretty much the way I have it set is that every time a loop length halves or doubles, it adds or takes away a number. And so pretty much this setup works for that. And so this just basically adjusts it that whatever changes happen to the loop length affect the hold time. And then over here, these just are adjustments for things like speed and pitch. These will also make adjustments to the hold time. So this whole section, and then here you see time stretching, all of this is just basically set to make sure that the hold time always works right no matter what's going on within these samples, within the slices. Because again, as soon as if this stuff isn't dealt with, then either what'll happen when you play a slice, either it won't play all the way through, or else you'll get a click at the end. And if you don't deal with things like pitch, then for example, as you move the speed up or the pitch, if you don't deal with hold time problems, then you'll start getting repeats as you go to a higher pitch, and as you go to lower pitch, it won't play the whole sample. So that stuff is pretty important to get these working right. Then the last thing I have in here is this is kind of the first part of the retrig setup. And then this is for both retrigs, the loop length and the MIDI retrig. And these are connected to a note grid patch that's within here. So this is the rest of the retrigs. Not too much going on over here. But the one kind of tricky thing for me with getting the retrigs to work with the rest of it is a lot of that has to do with actually this stuff on the sidebars, with whether or not you're in digital mode or true mode, and if retrigger is on always, if you have note through, all of these things really really affect the behavior of how these things work. And so they all need to kind of be working correctly together. Because like if you'll notice, this is in digital mode, but the rest of them, and the sampler is in digital mode, but these two polygrids are in true mode. And some of the, like for example, within the retrigger, it works better. It's easier to get the retriggers if you have this set to never. But the problem, and if you have note through off, but the problem then is that when you play a slice, it doesn't immediately jump to the slice. It might lag a little bit. So getting all that stuff to kind of work, to gel together so that the slices all trigger when they need to, the retrigs work how they're supposed to. There's some kind of, it just takes some experimentation, but I'm going to get into all that in these videos. And then one of the other things that was kind of tricky with the retrigs is getting these, these releases to work correctly. So like I was saying, I want that release to happen when it's done. So the tricky thing about that is that I want when it's released to play the exact length of the sample. So I can't just like add a release on it, because then it's not going to be corresponded with the whole time. So the way I have it working is that when it gets to the end of stutters, either in the MIDI or the loop retrigs, it just triggers a new note and it immediately jumps to the full loop length, and it runs a gate in that'll allow it to play for the full duration of the sample. And hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, I'm kind of just going over some of the things that you can that I'm going to be going over in all these following videos. And then, like I said too, I'm going to be showing some other techniques for doing this. Like I've experimented with a handful of different ways of doing these kind of slicers. Like if you look over here, you can see pretty much this same exact slicer, but without the kind of scanning thing happening. Let me see, where is it? 64th step. So this one is pretty much the same exact slicer, except it's not doing that thing where it scans through the values and sends them into sample and holds. In this one, the slices are all hardwired. They're all doing their thing. But you can see, because these slices have all this information to how they get connected to each other, it ends up being so many modules that the CPU load is just too high. So this method, I think, is not the best way to do it. And then you can see too, I have some, older versions of this kind of thing that were working in totally different ways. So like, let me just load in one of these. So I'm probably going to be showing some of these other methods to do this too. So like you can see, this is a similar type of patch. I showed this one once on a I showed this patch on a video, and this patch excuse me, this patch is working in a totally different way than the one I'm working on currently. So this one, here's where all the slice information is happening. So they're all hardwired in. And this one, the hold time works completely differently. So now, I have a simpler formula for getting the hold time, because before I had this whole big array here, and then I realized I didn't need all this stuff because I could use some math modules to simplify the whole process. But then on this one, I have a simpler method for how I'm adjusting them. This over here is what adjusts sample length to affect the hold time. So basically in this one, it analyzes anytime the length gets halved or doubled, and it just moves it up or down one step within these merge modules. And so what's control, so this feeds back into the hold time, and what's controlling these are these little things over here. So this is like a speed adjustment, pitch adjustment, key track adjustment, reverse, different things. This one had some other features that the one I'm working on now doesn't have. So all of these kind of have different structures to them. So you can see there's many ways about going about getting the same kind of final goals, and they all have their pros and cons. So yeah, so basically the next videos after this, first I'm going to be showing just the basics of setting up for key tracking and division slicing, which is pretty simple. I showed that in a video recently. It doesn't take long at all to set that up. And then once that's done, I'm going to be doing another video exploring multiple different ways to get the loop lengths working. So, because some people might want them to be very linked, some people might not want them. So I'm going to show a few different methods for loop length. Then I'll do a video about the different ways to get hold time working. And then I'm going to do a video showing how to get all the adjustments working right. I'll probably do a video for things like retrigs and time stretching and all these things. And then finally, I'll probably make a video that just shows how to get everything working correctly and to get all the timings right, so things are hitting on time, you're not getting errors, so kind of how to optimize the whole thing so things work right. So this will kind of be an ongoing video series. I don't know when I'm going to be uploading the next one. It probably won't be for at least another week or two, because I just have some stuff going on, and I kind of worked so long working on this patch recently that I kind of fell behind on other stuff. But I will be following these videos up pretty soon. And like I said too, I do have, I am planning to put out a pack of some grid patches in the near future. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll continue this pretty soon. Okay, bye.